Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. If you would like to support this channel, please hit the like button and consider subscribing if you enjoy the content. And now, let's start with the first story. It's called Stop on the Ray. This goes back about a decade. I had a job in New York City that required me to drive from place to place fixing various equipment. The company provided a vehicle and it was stocked with hardware, tools and spare parts to fix small problems. For larger issues, we would need to stop and pick up the equipment at the warehouse, which happened to be near where I live. We would also stop here a few times a week to restock our vehicles as needed. Clock-in was at 8 AM, usually at the first customer. Traffic was horrible, and if I left after 6:55, 30 to 45 minutes drive before 7, 1.5 to 2.5 hours after 7. I was late. The later I left, the more traffic compounded. Often I would stop at the warehouse to pick up parts that were ordered and get to clock in the extra 15 to 20 minutes. I requested to be paid for my time for some of the commutes as well, due to the increased traffic after, and was denied. Then I found out that legally I'm paid after my first stop, regardless of what the company said. Not only did I start clocking in at 8 AM at the warehouse, I would stop there every day for one reason or another. I'm not late, I'm at the warehouse. They changed their tune and started paying for my time in traffic. I went back to my 6:45 AM warehouse stop and tallied the overtime every day for the remainder of my time there. The next story is called Watching Karma Unfold. This happened about 15 years ago. I was an event manager for a venue space and several hotels. I worked for the hotels but ran the event space. When I started, the event venue was in the red. I pulled them into the black in about 8 months. In month 11, the event space team hired a sales manager to help bring in additional business. The new sales manager, we'll call her Karen, would constantly double book pro bono events, causing my paying customers to have to move dates, or worse, move venues. This went on for a few months. At month 14, the owners of both properties decided to split their partnership, which meant my role was being eliminated. I was given a 2 weeks notice to wrap up any events I was working on. Well, the conference center owners didn't like counter-signing contracts. They wanted the customer to sign, but they never countersigned unless it was requested by the customer's attorney. I didn't realize when I started how bad this was from a legal standpoint for the customer. So my last 2 weeks arrive and I'm letting my customers know they won't be working with me anymore. I also went in and signed all the contracts I had open for the next 8 months and sent them to each of my customers. This way, if the venue tried anything, they had a signed contract, regardless if I still worked for them. I was employed with them, and therefore signed on behalf of them. This was how it was explained to me from legal. Here's where karma comes into play. About 3 years after I left, a friend sent me an article about the business. After too many pro bono events for customers that never materialized, the company had to file for bankruptcy. They sold the property and wound up in debt. Karen did try to start her own event business. When that didn't work, she was hired back at the new venue space before being fired for not bringing in enough revenue. I don't know where she's at these days. We are not connected on LinkedIn anymore. She unconnected with me. The third story is called Made Redundant. So, I have a friend we call Ted. A few years ago he was 64 and considering retirement. Ted worked in health analytics for a large metro health organization. He would look at patient data and see ways to improve patient outcomes and gain funding. Each month he would email to the relevant department heads data and links for government grants or funding applications. 12 months prior to this, Ted got a new boss, Sally, who didn't appreciate what Ted did. Sally pretty much ignored Ted, except for a simple instruction that all data and reports go to her and no one else. She would deal with it. The organization declares a restructuring with lots of jobs lost. They are extremely determined to get this through. Ted is to be redundant. In a meeting, Sally tells Ted his work is useless and he is of no use to the organization. She says she hasn't opened one of his email reports in 12 months, which clearly shows he doesn't matter to the organization. In 3 months he will be redundant and receive a handsome package, over a year's pay. Sally was pretty rude to Ted, and HR asked her to leave. It is decided that Sally will no longer deal with Ted. The union was putting up a decent fight and slowing down the restructure. Ted makes the offer to HR that he will not fight the redundancy if they pay him 3 months of sick leave and after that his redundancy. They agree, but insist that he does a full data clean for patient confidentiality reasons in the next 2 days, and then his sick leave starts. Ted backs up a copy, then rings IT who deletes every file, all on his hard drive and not on a server. He was not so tech savvy and physically destroyed his hard drive. He also asked them to search through any unopened email he had sent and delete them from the server. IT wipes every last trace of Ted from the system. Ted gave the copy of his data to the internal auditors on his last day. On Ted's last day, he also discovered that Sally didn't know he was going on sick leave the next day. She rings with a sweet as a pie voice. "Hey, Ted, I need to look at those numbers you sent me as I can't find them. The auditors say we are 2.2 million short of funding this year, and you might be able to help out." Ted replies, "Sure, but ring me tomorrow." Ted leaves and retires happily. Sally apparently could not find Ted's data in the coming weeks. Ted ignored her calls as he was on sick leave. The internal auditors investigated and found that Sally had cost the organization over $2.5 million in funding. At the same time, complaints came from department heads about Ted's redundancy. Someone forwarded Ted an email a couple of months later from the CEO. After a brief conversation with Sally, she has decided to look for other opportunities. The last story is called "You Can Quit." At my last job, my boss, let's call her Kay, hated me. She turned everything into a competition. She mocked me publicly. She took credit for my work. She divulged my personal medical information in front of all our co-workers. She was cruel, and needless to say, I avoided her as much as I could. End of 2020, I had just had my first baby. I was so nervous wreck my entire pregnancy, working from home and being extra careful. After maternity leave, which was disgustingly short, I had returned to the office with some precautions set in place. My boss became crueler to me over those first few weeks back. Then she suddenly announced that, regardless of any negative feelings toward it, she had decided we all had to attend this training in another state. Keep in mind that there were mandatory 2 weeks at home quarantines in place for anyone coming back to my state. But my boss fully planned on ignoring those quarantines and demanding we all return to the office as soon as we got back. I was carrying a heavy workload and pulling a lot of freight around the office, and I had some rank. So I felt fully comfortable expressing my deep concerns to Kay. I expressed I simply didn't feel comfortable going in the middle of what was going on and asked if there was a remote training I could attend instead. She firmly, adamantly insisted there was no remote training and informed me that I could quit if I was that upset with her decision. It's important to note that she insisted on this for weeks, even claiming to have contacted the training organization to make sure. I decided on the spot after that meeting that I would be quitting, but I needed to check my boxes first, which took me a few weeks to figure out. Sometime after this meeting and an incessant insistence that there was no remote training, it finally occurred to me to check with the organization putting on the training. I asked them to clarify if that truly was remote training or not. I did, and lo and behold, there was, and they had been offering it for months. I asked them to email this information to me. Now to figure out how to use this valuable information. Right? Wrong. As soon as I step back into the office, Kay starts fake empathizing with me out of nowhere, in front of all our co-workers, saying she really wished she didn't need to force me to go to this training. So I said, if you feel so bad, let me go to the remote training. She looked at me in surprise, and her face turned beet red. Before she could fight me, I pulled up the email with the information and read it aloud in front of all our co-workers. No one said anything. They just stared, wide-eyed at her while she blubbered like a fool. Long story short, after pulling that fast one on her, I pulled her into a private meeting and gave my notice. She was horrified because, as I stated prior, I carried a lot of the work around the office. But, like she said, I could quit if I didn't like her decision. For everyone asking about why she was insisting we attend in person, I uncovered 2 reasons. First, she had a personal reason to be in the city the training was in. She was hoping to get her rate paid by the company to go. And second, she knew it would inconvenience and scare me, and that she could dangle her power over me. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories in today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and want to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.